A circuit steeped in so much Grand Prix history that you can pretty much deal it out with a sieve. You can argue that this circuit has hosted some of the greatest action and the most memorable races in all of Formula One. But here in the world of sim racing, it's time for the Grand Prix Series then to take itself over to Silverstone and the full layout circuit for this. The race in the Grand Prix Series is streaming live on iRacing Live, brought to you by Race Spot TV. 21 drivers all looking to try and make it to the very top. How difficult is this circuit though? Our good friends over at Blue Flag Racing have given us a lap of the track. There we've just seen a fantastic lap of the track with our friends over at Blue Flag Racing Silverstone. A very difficult circuit, 5.13 kilometers, 17 turns, and a 40-lap race today. Pit stops may be coming into effect here today, potentially not. Worth looking at track conditions. It's a hot one today. 21 degrees in the air, 38 on the track, and winds coming directly from the south at about 19 kilometers an hour. Qualifying currently underway at the moment then, and just 2 laps and 8 minutes to get all of those lap times underway. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's hashtag Do You Mind here in the commentary booth. Mr. Shakespeare, joined alongside by Mr. Connery Maddock over to my left-hand side. Connery, you were there at Suzuka, I believe it was. I was not, unfortunately, there at Suzuka, but Kazuki Umeshima came away with a win on home turf, I do believe, there, and it was a fantastic race to behold. Expecting more of the same, I do believe.
Yeah, exactly. It was Kazuki Umeshima getting one over on Apex Racing UK's Marcus Jensen during that particular race. While the front two in that race absolutely off and away compared to the rest of the field. We also saw good battles with Ruslan Sabitov, Matthew Kalastrani, Marky Warmington as well. So, and most of those drivers are here today as well. So they're going to be here week after week after week supporting this series.
Yeah, they certainly are here, and well, now is going to be the time then for those to get those moves on and getting it in, like Chen Bolot-Bassi then trying to make that drive to the line at the moment here, Connery. And for the moment, you know, you can hold on, you can wait, but for the moment, things staying in a very good position here for Bolot-Bassi.
Yeah, pole position by around, well, just under a tenth of a second right there for that number one driver, the course sim racing machine of Chen Bolot-Bassi. But in terms of other drivers that are out on laps right now, another one's going to be Ruslan Sabitov. He's just going to come out of left field right now. This is going to be his final timed lap coming across the line. And he does not get that lap logged, in fact. He must have made a mistake somewhere on the lap that got himself an off track, which means that lap is null and void. He'll be starting at least 7th.
Yeah, at least 7th is not where you want to be here during the racing action here, Connor. And when you're dealing with a circuit like this, where it can be, in some areas of the circuit, difficult to overtake, where are the real opportunities to really make your way back through the field?
Yeah, in terms of overtaking opportunities, you've got the big braking zones down at Abbey. You've also got Priory. And maybe if you're going to get a good run out of left field as well, maybe you can make it side by side coming down the pit straight and maybe make a little bit of a brave pass coming down into Copse Corner. But in terms of overtaking opportunities, not really all that much because there's an absolute ton of medium speed corners around this little bit of an older layout here at Silverstone. So should be an interesting race nonetheless.
Yeah, it should be a very interesting race. And when you are looking at this circuit, you know, talk about the track conditions here, Connery. It can be incredibly, incredibly hot. It's, 38 degrees. The tyres are going to be burning up around here.
Yep, they are. And, well, usually in this series, we don't see the pit stops unless the track is very warm, but the track is decently warm. It's clear weather. 71 degrees in the air, so relatively cold, just a little bit colder than default weather. But because it's clear, you see that sun is actually beating down onto the track, just heating it up. And, well, let's see how these tires are going to deal with that sort of heat as we come towards the end of qualifying. We've got around about 20 seconds left in the, in the session, and it's pretty safe right now to go over the grid.
Yeah, Connor, unfortunately, I'm having a few issues at the moment. You can run us down through the grid.
Yep, I'll do exactly that, and it's going to be Chembok Bassi on pole position for this round of the iRacing Grand Prix Series here at Silverstone. Lining up on the front row with Chembok Bassi, it is going to be Basilius Jurgis. Second row is going to consist of Kazuki Umashima and Dan Brewer. Then fifth place is going to be Jan Schwitter, then Michael Partington, Ruslan Sabatov, Diego Oliveira sit P7, P8. Matthew Calistrani and Mark A. Warmington round out your top 10 on the grid. Then it's going to be Ronaldo Augusto, Dennis Branch lining up on the row behind them. And then it's Ollie Corker, Ryan Parkins, Thomas Boucher, Yannick Danish, Christian Buch, Kleber Toffoli, Evan Luthurus, Ionut Manea, and Francisco Verdegasse is going to start at the back of the grid.
But they saw their 21 cars then all getting themselves lined up. Connery, the run into turn one, Copse Corner, incredibly quick, incredibly difficult. How will the drivers be looking to try and make that one work in their favour today?
Yeah, getting a good start is absolutely crucial here because there's no major braking zones pretty much before you get to Stowe. That's just turn 7 on this track at Silverstone. So your Copse Corner is your first corner, very high speed, high downforce corner. Then you've got the Magnus and Beckett section, which is all about downforce. So going too wide through those particular sections is going to lose you a lot of time, especially on the first lap. So you got to get single file very, very quickly.
Yeah, you do here, and Connery just getting ready to grid up here, and I believe the start just a couple of moments away.
Yes, it is. We're still waiting for a few cars to line themselves up on the grid. Ruslan Sabatov is going to be one of them. And there's another driver at the back of the grid just yet to get himself onto the grid. And we have around about 20 seconds at least left to go once all of your drivers get themselves onto the grid. And I think that is a full grid here. And we will just be waiting. The drivers will be waiting for that green light to show.
Yeah, they will. Green flag then in the air. Underway here then in the early goings. It's a very poor start then from the third row. I believe that's Michael Parkinson getting himself straight through in towards turn number 1. Bollet Bassi then holding on to things and keeping himself in the front. Umashima second. Jurgis then looking to try and make the moves here in third position. Trying to go around the outside. Trying to make it a core 1-2. And for the moment, the core 1-2 won't happen into Magnus and Beckett. He'll have to stay behind for the time being. A little bit of a wider line behind. Yep, and there is a crash further back in the field as well. Car going straight on. That's Christian Boog getting involved in a huge wreck then in towards Magnus and Beckett's. Connery, not the start that would have wanted. That was all down to a PSR machine running wide.
Yeah, but that PSR machine was actually Ronaldo Gushud just taking a little bit of an off-track excursion through the first part of the Magnus and Beckett section. Maybe a little bit of contact with Dennis Branch. In fact, there was tire-to-tire contact with Dennis Branch, sending Augusto across the apex of the corner and then just collecting Ryan Parkins, spins Ryan Parkins into the middle of the track, collects Thomas Boucher, and then Christian Bouge is also going to get himself involved in that one. Evan Lathuros also has front wing damage.
We've also seen more issues between Ollie Croker and Mark Warmington, I do believe it is, in towards Stowe Corner. And coming out of the corner, they both came together and incidents happened, but they've all managed to keep themselves clean though at the front of the field. Bollet Bassi, Umashima, Jurgis, Partington, Schweiter, Brewer, Sabatov, Oliveira and Castellani or Kalistani even here, rounding out what is 9 drivers then, who have all kept themselves pretty clean and pretty calm here in the opening stages here, Connery. What you have to remember, though, is DRS will only come into activation on the next lap. So in terms of making the overtakes right now, it's going to have to be done on slipstream alone, and that will also have to rely on the ERS.
Yeah, a couple of cars down on pit road already. Thomas Boucher, Mark A. Warmington, perhaps to repair some damage that has incurred to their cars. Boucher actually had a little bit of a spin just coming into the left field corner, which is the final corner, well, second to last corner technically here at Silverstone. But, well, this race has taken some early casualties.
It has taken some early casualties. The battle for what I do believe now is 4th position really hotting up. Partington holding off here Jan Schwieter. Schwieter gets close down into the Vale, but coming through the corner of Club Corner, it's going to be unable to really close up onto the back. The issue comes down into the form of the dirty air here, Connery. You can try to get a huge wiggle coming out of the Abbey chicane there. Means that Jan Schwieter there gets a little bit lucky, and especially with the tyres on a hot surface like this one today, they are going to be burning up a lot more with mistakes like that.
Yeah. And especially if some of your drivers decide to go the whole race distance without changing the tyres. There's around about 2/3 of race distance here in this iRacing Grand Prix Series at Silverstone. So they can make it, but maybe we'll see what we saw at Suzuka, where it was a little bit borderline. Some of your midfield runners did actually take that risk and come down pit road. I think that strategy is a little bit more viable here because the temperature is a little bit higher, but we'll just have to wait and see. It's really hard to tell at the moment.
It certainly is, and especially when a lap is 1:21 in qualifying, you know that you can really get a lot of pace out of it. Now the DRS and ERS trains will happen behind Partington here in 4th position. Schwieter, Brewer there, Sabatov, Oliveira, and Kalistani as well. It's worth noting here that we've got quite a few drivers up towards the front who are classed as Pro World Championship drivers here, Connery. And for those drivers here who are A license, of course, it's A license only and Pro license who can really get themselves into this event. If you get yourself up in that A license and you're racing against the pros, that's a huge benefit for you racing against drivers who are already at the top of their peak right now.
Exactly. It's an absolutely fantastic learning experience for some of these drivers, especially the lower I-rated drivers in this field, the likes of Dennis Branch, Yannick Danish, Jonas Meneer as well. They're around about the 3,000 I-rating mark, and just be racing with people around about 6,000, 5,000 I-rating. That's going to be an absolutely fantastic learning experience for those guys, because you don't often get to do that. A lot of these pro drivers, they just run the big series, the iRacing World Champion Grand Prix Series, the Blancpain GT Series, etc., etc. And to race against those guys on an iRacing official series, that must be an absolutely fantastic experience.
It certainly can be. Of course, this is arguably one of the strongest proving grounds to know who is going to be up there next. Names that you don't normally hear of, the likes of, say, the 7 of Dan Brewer, who has really come up from a bit of obscurity, you could say, in an iRacing sense here at Connery. But you look at Dan Brewer and what he can do here. You know, he's up in P number 6. He may have dropped 2 positions off of qualifying, but he now has the ability to try and get back at Schwieter. Goes really close and actually makes a mistake there. Ran a little bit too deep into the corner, and now he's going to almost lose the position to Sabatov here. Sabatov then stuck on the outside, trying to make the move happen. Won't happen for him then, trying to get the up and under. But that was a case of almost losing 1 position there from a very, very costly error.
Yeah, a little bit too brave on the brakes, and it can punish you, especially down on the brakes into Stowe corner. And then Ruslan Sabatov, he's going to have a little bit of luck. Is the positive sim racing driver, but he's not going to make the move stick, coming just before bridge corner now. But, well, that mistake from Dan Brewer has really cost him. He's dropped off the back of Michael Partington and Jan Schwieter, now coming under threat from Sabatov and Diego Oliveira. And to an extent, Matteo Calastrani as well. But this midfield pack, around about from P4 to around about P13, still very, very close together.
Still very close together. It's worth noting here that Kazuki Umeshima has not got rid, or Bolibasi has not got rid of Kazuki Umeshima here. Of course, at the start of the season here, Connor, you could say they were both teammates, Bolibasi and Umeshima. Now, though, Bolibasi decided to leave Radicals Online, move to Core Sim Racing, and well, it seems to be that, talking to Chen Bolibasi, he wants motivation, he wants drive, he wants to get some really strong results here in the iRacing World Championship, and he's looking to try and prove it here in the Grand Prix Series to show that he can be the best driver. Of course, the only Turkish driver in the World Championship as things stand, but he hasn't got rid of Umeshima, of course, the winner last time out, and will have to try and deal with that. The gap was 7 tenths when they last crossed the line.
Yeah, he kind of really needs to make a statement here by getting one over that Radicals Online driver of Kazuki Umeshima. And well, if they stay this close for the rest of the race, then it's going to be absolutely fantastic battle indeed. We have to remind everyone that DRS is now enabled. We're above 3 laps into this race, but we haven't really seen it come into effect all that much. It's mainly going to be used on the hanger straight on the run down to Stowe Corner, but where it's definitely going to be used is in this mid-pack fight for P4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, all the way down to P13.
Yeah, you certainly will see that becoming an issue right now as you look at Diogo Oliveira in the 4 machine, just trying to get back into play here in terms of the race. And well, Oliveira, likes of Oliveira, Sabatov, you talk about likes of, say, Partington as well, have all been very, very much using this consistently to try and get themselves through. Although that you're not racing the same track week on week on week, you are still looking to try and drive this circuit to make sure that you can get this right for, say, later in the season. This is why this circuit here at Silverstone will be crucial to drivers like Bollick Bassi, like Umeshima, like Jurgis, and Oliveira in this field here, Connery, because they will drive this circuit later on in the season where they will need to get the setup experience, and you won't get any more experience than driving this against some very, very high-class opposition.
Yeah, exactly. It was exactly the same case when we went to Suzuka last week, because that is also on the calendar for the iRacing World Championship Grand Prix Series. Just saw Bollick Bassi, your leader, run a little bit wide there, coming through Club Corner. Not going to be too much of an issue for him, though, just a few tenths of a second loss, but that just means that Kazuki Umeshima is just going to be a little bit closer than Bollick Bassi might have wanted to. But I just want to go back to the discussion about this track is going to be very, very useful for them, because, again, as you said, it appears on the World Championship Grand Prix Series, so Bollick Bassi, Umeshima, Jurgis, and Oliveira are going to be using this as a setup session, as you said, and that could be crucial when it comes to that race.
Certainly could be here as Oliveira again tries to get onto the back of Sabatov and again doesn't quite manage to make a move or make any real sort of inroads in terms of the racing going on. As far as the top 3 though are concerned, Connery, they've completely checked out here, Jurgis, Umeshima and Bollick Bassi. Although Jurgis is now falling off the back of the leading 2, you know, he's still lost quite a bit of time here. The gap is about 6 seconds back to Jurgis for Partington. And for Partington, that is not what he was needing to be having in the early stages. He's now fighting for the best of the rest.
Yeah, he lost around about 1.1 seconds on that last lap alone. And so he must have made a little bit of a mistake there to drop even further back off of the back of Basilius Jurgis. And now he's under threat from Jan Schwitter, who did gain around about, well, just a quarter of a tenth of a second. It's not all that much, but Jan Schwitter is gaining, just staying on the back of Michael Partington. Meanwhile, behind Jan Schwitter, you also have this trio of Dan Brewer, Ruslan Sabitov, and Diego Oliveira that may be a threat if something goes a little bit haywire in this battle between Partington and Schwitter.
And they do have to keep their eyes focused here on this one, because any one small mistake could mean 4 or 5 positions can be lost, and you have to make sure that you take advantage of it as quickly as you possibly can here. Looking at Sabatov trying to get himself back, and you can see drivers trying to take a wider line through certain corners like Luffield there. You saw Dan Brewer just edge himself off at the apex of the corner there, Connery. Of course, when you are dealing with the dirty air, something that people don't normally understand is the engine temperatures rise. You talk about the tyre temperatures, they also start to rise. That means that you're not always running at 100% in the dirty air. That makes life even more difficult to try and make an overtake, as Brewer now really following religiously the line of Jan Schwitter in front of him. But again, ERS train, DRS train, not going to really get too close in this sort of train fight.
No, and you just notice the loss of downforce the cars experience as they head through Maggotts and Beckett's section. Actually, Dan Brewer may have an opportunity on Jan Schwitter, but Jan Schwitter successfully defends that position. I noticed that Jan Schwitter was very, very slow in sort of the second half of the hangar straight right there, so maybe some ERS recovery going on right there, because you just saw Dan Brewer close up by a huge margin over the course of that piece of track. So that could be an interesting one to keep an eye on later on in the race if that sort of theme continues. But Partington's still holding position right here, but Jan Schwitter's definitely not giving up.
No, he's not giving up here in terms of the battle, and again, he's just trying to work out where his strengths are, where his weaknesses are as they head through Priory, the left-hander. Of course, Mogarfilio, the Radicals online, last time he was taking that corner, he had a little bit of an excursion, shall we say, and found himself on the international straight as things were. So now it's all about trying to get that run then towards Copse Corner, turn number 1 again for these drivers at the front. But, you know, you look at Umeshima again, though, the gap was put down to about half a second that time when they crossed the line, Connery. But yet again, Magnussen Beckett's is not the corner in terms of overtaking that you can really follow someone throughout this circuit. You look at Umeshima, he is very happy just to sit behind and wait for an opportunity to arrive because Bollock Bassi might make a mistake around here. He's very happy just to sit and apply the pressure. He doesn't need to make a move just yet in this race.
No, he does not. As Kazuki Mishima, he's very, very good at this sort of part of the lap as they were coming through, well, they were coming through Club Corner. He was just closing right up to the rear wing of Bollock Bassi, but then Bollock Bassi just gets a bit of a better exit off of the corners, just stretching the legs of that core sim racing car. And as they come under the right hand of Bridge Corner right there, you just see that gap has just opened up a little bit for the front of your field. But Kazuki Umeshima is going to close up at this stage of the lap. It's the slow corners that Kazuki Umeshima is absolutely nailing right now. But perhaps unfortunately for him, Silverstone is mostly made out of medium speed corners.
Yeah, it is here, and that might be the issue going on. Also seeing another battle here on circuit between the likes of, say, Yannick Danish and Ollie Croker. Croker, you can see a heavily bent front wing on the front left-hand side as you see it. So, you know, when you do have that bent front wing on the front right even, you know, that is really going to be affecting him in terms of his downforce levels, in terms of the way that he can really run close behind, say, the driver of Yannick Danish right now. And maybe it's not a true representation of his speed doing 124.9s here, Connery.
No, definitely not. And, well, if he does decide to make a pit stop, they'll get that front wing repaired, no problem. It's definitely not the start to the race that Ollie Croker wanted, and actually not the corner that Yannick Danish wanted. He's very slow on the exit. This may give Ollie Croker an opportunity coming down onto the brakes into Stowe Corner. DRS wide open. He moves to the inside line, and this would be a relatively easy pass for Ollie Croker, but can he hold this position with his damaged front wing? Runs a little bit wide on exit, but Yannick Danish not in a position to reply to that move just yet.
Not in a position at all. A very, very accomplished move, you could say, there from Ollie Croker. You can see Brewer again right on the rear of Jan Schweitzer as they head into Abbey. And now they've all closed up a lot more. Sabatov under pressure from Oliveira in under bridge and through bridge. Then they come along and you can see it just opens and closes again and again and again. And of course, that's going to be the key here around this circuit. The case of tyres versus no tyres. If you decide to come in and make a pit stop, you're going to have to hope that you can gain all that time again by using the new rubber to your advantage here, Connery. Of course, there's no refueling in this series, so they're not going to gain an advantage by underfueling or overfueling the car. It's simply going to be down to how can you use those tyres and the fresh rubber to your advantage.
Yeah, it should be if we do see a pit stops, which we did see at Suzuka, as I said, for some of your midfield runners, but most of your cars that were running at the front of the field decided not to come down pit road. They had a large buffer between them and the rest of the field, so they thought it wouldn't be worth the risk taking the pit stop as... well, this battle for P4 and on and downwards is still raging on. Jan Schwitter has dropped off the back of Michael Partington. That could be important. If he drops back any further, then he might risk losing the DRS. But like Kazuki Umeshima, he likes these sort of slow-speed short corners, the slow-speed chicane. Just closes up a little bit that deficit between himself and Michael Partington. But he has Dan Brewer all big in his mirrors, and, well, he has to defend and attack at the same time.
Yeah, and that is a very, very difficult skill to really get right here. Defending and attacking at the same time is kind of like trying to do 18,000 different tasks at once. You can't really do it effectively, as there was a little double take there from Jan Schwitter going through the corner. It's worth noting, Connery, in terms of the sort of drivers here in this field, the likes of, say, a Jan Schwitter or a Kazuki Umeshima, about a year ago, you could even argue 6 months ago, you know, you'd see them religiously on, you know, the Formula Renault broadcast that we had here on Racebot TV. Now they're looking to move up into this Formula One. Umeshima a little bit less because he's been around the block so much. But for Jan Schwitter, he gets a huge kick out of Copse. He'll lose one position. You know, coming up from that Formula Renault, like drivers like Frank Schothorst as well, you know, it shows that the Formula Renault has much of a benefit to gaining here in terms of the Formula One car.
Yeah, exactly, and that's just the ladder, the ladder of progression here on iRacing, as we do show you the replay of that huge twitch that Jan Schwitter had coming through Kopp's corner. Definitely not the place you want to be doing that. He just gets on the curb a little bit, just unsettles the car, spits him out towards the outside of the track. But as I was mentioning, this is kind of the ladder that iRacing have. You start off in the lower powered open wheel cars like the Skip Barber Racing School Series. Then you move up to the Formula Renault 2.0s. Then you can either go to either IndyCar or this McLaren MP430.
Yeah, you certainly do. It's worth noting here that Chen Bolot-Bassi now is starting to try and stretch that gap. He broke DRS last time by. We'll see if that gap has really increased then as he next comes over the line to start lap 13 here out of 40, already over that 1/4 distance, and we're going to see the pit stop strategy maybe in the next 7 laps time, and the gap 1.3 seconds. I think Bolot-Bassi's had enough here. He's decided, you know what, I'm gone. See you, Kazuki. There's not much that Kazuki has really done to respond here. And that's going to be a little bit worrying then from the Radicals Online team, a team that has been struggling in the World Championship and in general over the last 2 years here, Connery.
Yeah, and it seems like Kazuki Mishima is struggling with his tires right now, looking at the way he took Magnus and Beckett's last time by. He sort of missed the, slightly slid through the apex of Beckett's, and then he had had another twitch on the latter end of the section as well. So not happy with those tires are behaving at the moment is Kazuki Umeshima. He did lose 0.2 of a second last time by Chen Bolot-Bassi, but so Chen Bolot-Bassi is definitely looking very, very strong, especially at this stage in the race. Now, if you're Kazuki Umeshima, you have a relatively decent buffer of a couple of seconds over Basilis Gergis, and you have a huge buffer over Michael Partington. Is it worth trying to make a pit stop at this stage in the race? Even though it's not the hottest that we've ever seen in a race here on iRacing, but it's still decently warm out there with the clear skybox. So do you risk it?
You might do here in this situation. The problem that Kazuki Umeshima has is he's got to find some clean air for when he gets out here, as he needs to try and get issues going on. We are looking at the 18 here of Christian Bug here, trying to defend the line against Ino Mania. He actually makes the position there, so he's done very well there through Stowe, heading up towards then the corners of Club, and you can see a replay here up on screen of exactly just how he's managed to do that. And you can see he's done it with DRS and around the outside, Connery. That is the most difficult way to try and do it there at Stowe, and he did so incredibly well.
Yep, he did a pass around the outside of Stowe corner. It's actually the number 4 machine of Diego Oliveira. First one to blink and first one to come down pit road. This is a scheduled stop. Doesn't look like there's any damage on that car. So he's going to get some fresh rubber on that McLaren MP430. No fuel, of course, since they can't refuel. And then he'll be off and away in just a couple of seconds. It's amazing how fast Formula 1 pit stops go by.
Yeah, it certainly is here, as you're going to see there, a 0.6 second stop, a 4.6 second stop, maybe a little bit slower than he would have liked. We do see sometimes pit stops going in around the 4.1s to 4.2s around here, and Oliveira comes out in traffic though. He has Tolofi there and Manea, but he will have the use of the DRS when he gets onto the straight here. You can see he needs to get a great run out of the corner now, and is tucked right on underneath, and Toffoli's going to let him go. He's not fighting in the same race as him, has every reason just to pull over and say, you know what, go ahead, Diogo, I don't want to be really touching with you. For Manea, though, it's a different story, because they are technically fighting here, Connery, for track position here.
Yep, exactly, and that may be with, the team members of the likes of Chen Bolot-Bassi, Kazuki Mishima, and Basilis Gergis. If they're watching this race, then they'll be keeping an eye on the lap times of Diego Oliveira at this moment in time to see how fast those fresh tyres really are. But this lap obviously isn't going to be representative since it is a loud lap, but look at how much Diego Oliveira is getting held up by Manea here as they come through Bridge Corner. And unless he gets past relatively soon, he's absolutely hemorrhaging time coming through Priory now, coming up towards, this is the left-hander before left field corner. He's still behind, and that is definitely not going to help his race.
No, it isn't here. Stuck at Luffield, will now need to try and make a move, maybe down into Kopp's corner, a difficult place to make it happen, but it might be an opportunity that needs to happen here. As you can see, tucked right in underneath, will need to move to the inside. It's difficult to make it happen, but again, has to back out of it into turn number 1. You can see Manea struggling in the mid part of the corner, and well, thank you very much, we'll say Diogo Oliveira, side by side, let's go, into Maggots and Beckett, and he takes the position, and Manea had to check up there, because it was a complete chop of the nose from the driver of Diogo Oliveira. He's now gone, and Manea will now come under pressure from Tolofi here. But we're going to look here at Ruslan Sabatov then, under a lot of pressure here, or applying the pressure here on Jan Schwitter. Schwitter's starting to fall backwards here, Connery. Maybe he is struggling on the tyres.
Yeah, maybe he is, because the cars ahead of him of Michael Partington and Dan Brewer, they have absolutely checked out from Jan Schwitter's perspective. And now Schwitter has to defend from the number 6 driver, Positive Sim Racing, Ruslan Sabatov, as they head their way through Luffield. Was thinking that Ruslan was going to head his way down pit road then, but it was just not a great exit coming out of Luffield corner. They'll go at least one more lap before even deciding to make a pit stop here. We haven't seen anyone else come down pit road for a scheduled stop. The only ones that have stopped are the ones that have had damage. The likes of Ryan Parkins is the only one that's out on track right now that has had an unscheduled stop, and Diego Oliveira is the only one that has had a scheduled stop. Let's see if anyone else joins them down pit roads during the course of the next few laps, which will be the pit window.
Worth noting here that Ruslan Sabatov's going to dive down to the inside here of Jan Schwiter down at Stowe, and he's going to get the position for the moment. You can see Schwiter now will try and make something happen, stuck on the outside though into the Vale, and will have to give up the position, but you can see Sabatov gets a worse run through the first part of the corner, trying to maximise the mid part, and there's the dirty air coming into play as Schwiter gets another little wiggle then on the front there, just trying to get onto the power, maybe a little bit too eager. So Jan Schwiter will lose another position then, and this is the fight for P number 6 going away. Of course, Dan Brewer putting in some fantastic laps. In fact, if you look at the lap times, he's done a 1:23.8. That's the quickest lap of the race by 3/10 of a second here, and doing a very good job of things, Connery.
Yeah, issues with the number 18. Christian Bouge has had a little bit of a spin, had no help from anyone else. He's just coming through Stowe corner, misses the apex of Stowe corner, tries to get the power down, but those rear tires weren't having any of it. They just spun up and spat the car around.
Yeah, that's not what Bouge wanted. Of course, has already been involved in a couple of incidents here today and has been struggling just a little bit with that McLaren MP430. A very ferocious beast, shall you say. It doesn't take the faint of hearted to really drive this machine, and I know that I certainly couldn't do it in terms of driving this machine around a circuit, but in terms of what's been going on, I was looking at Dan Brewer, and he has managed to set some of the quickest lap times of the race so far. A 1:23.893, I do believe, is very, very quick. And you look, though, at Bolot Bassi, he does have the quickest lap of the race on the 23.1. There's quite a bit here when you talk about it here, Connery.
Yeah, and that fastest lap last time by was actually set by Jan Bolot Bassi, 1:23.173. So he is absolutely flying in this stage. And here comes Dan Brewer down the inside of Michael Partington, maybe just coming into the left-hander there. That was a very hopeful move. He still may have a chance coming through the inside of Bridge Corner. Oh, he's just trying to make it squeeze through there. But Michael Partington just ferociously defending that position. Dan Brewer is absolutely on a roll at this moment in time. And if you're Michael Partington, you must be absolutely petrified right now.
Close, but not close enough. Brewer isn't afraid to throw this down at any given part of this circuit. So for Dan Brewer, he now needs to start working here, really emphasising every single move, trying to push Partington out of position in terms of the racing going on. We are on lap 18 of 40, so we are heading towards the halfway stage in this event. You can see, again, Partington close, looking at every single direction to make sure something happens here. Through Maggots, through Beckett's, now towards Chapel here, the long right-hander, and you can see they're just able to just pull out, but now DRS and ERS will come into play. He might save up for a couple of laps here to make a massive burst down towards the inside. He gets close again, and again, just not able to make it close enough here, Connery. Do you think that he's maybe saving a bit of ERS to really use all of it down that straight?
That could definitely be a possibility, but look at how closely that Dan Brewer follows tucked under the gearbox. Oh no, Dan Brewer round right there coming through the right-hander. That was club corner and too much traction on those rear tires. I have to wonder if he hit the curb. Well, he just tagged it maybe with the outside sidewall of the tires. But that is definitely not what Dan Brewer would have wanted. And that's a very, very, very weird place to have a spin, in fact.
It is here. It's a little bit too aggressive on the power, and now he drops himself behind Reynaldo Augusto here. So he's down in position number 10 overall in the race. And, you know, those tyres may be screaming. It might be time to bail and go in for a pit stop. The fact that he's worn off quite a bit of rubber and maybe flat-spotted the tyres a little bit as well. And you know what? Speaking of the devil, Dan Brewer will come in and get a new set of tyres. Now, I do expect him now to fall behind Diogo Oliveira in terms of the racing right now here, Connery. He's heading himself now through the left-hander of Brooklands corner, now towards Luffield. It seems pretty much straightforward that Oliveira will take the position away.
Yeah, that definitely looks to be the case because Oliveira is just coming out of left field right now. Meanwhile, that driver is still, Dan Brewer is still down on pit road, just getting his tires changed, and he will be out in the way. There goes Diogo Oliveira down into Cop's corner. And where does Dan Brewer filter out? It's behind to Foley, behind Vidacasa as well. And, well, he is definitely not having a great day after that spin.
No, he isn't. Being stuck behind Francisco Verdasco is not where you want to be. Has to negotiate both of those cars then to get themselves through, as we're looking at Bridge Corner here, and the battle's going on through Bridge Corner right now. You look at Sabatov checking away from Schwieter. You look at Kalistani here just falling off the back of this one here. So those in the mid battling here are really under a lot of issues here, as we're looking at Dennis Branch and Reynaldo Augusto then just there in the battle for 8th position going on. You feel that Augusto's been stuck there for quite a little bit. Both of them up quite a few positions. Dennis Branch, actually one of your biggest movers here. He's +4 for the day, Connery, and just keeping himself quiet and doing a very good job of things.
Yeah, definitely, as they're going to head their way out the final corner. To complete lap 19, so we're on lap 20, around about halfway through this race. No one else has come down pit road apart from Diego Oliveira and Dan Brewer. But, well, the pit window is getting very, very close to closing at this moment in time. So it seems unlikely that we'll see any further pit stops from the rest of your drivers. So most of them believe that they can make it towards the end of this race on the tyres. But that must be a feat in and of itself, with the amount of drivers that we've been seen struggling with the tyres, just getting the cars a little bit loose, just having trouble coming out of the corners. But, well, if they think they can make it to the end of the race, then I guess they can try.
Oh, Umeshima just taking a wild, wild ride out of Priory. And, well, Kazuki Umashima's chance of getting to the lead just falls away then from Bollet Bassi. Umeshima just gets a big twitch coming out of that very difficult medium-speed corner. Priory hits himself on the brakes, about 200 kilometers an hour, 4th gear, ran a little bit wide and had to take a bail, shall you say there, Connery, across the gravel, and that's cost him, in essence, of 3 seconds, and now puts him back with Paschalis Georgis.
Yeah, it does, and I think Kazuki Umeshima, well, thank you for exemplifying my point I made just before that happened. He just got, the car just broke away from him in the middle of the corner, spam towards the outside of the track, and yes, as you say, he's now within sight of Paschalis Georgis. I don't think he'll be too worried about any offensive coming from Paschalis Georgis, since even with that slow lap, that was pretty much matching the time of Paschalis Georgis with that mistake, so I don't think Kazuki Umeshima is too worried right now. The one thing that we will be worried about, though, is that maybe his race win just slipping from his grasp right now. Meanwhile, Ollie Kvorka has decided to make his way down pit road, finally getting that damaged front ring repaired.
Yeah, I'm not surprised to see him come down onto lane, maybe just half and halving it, making sure that he uses the most out of the tyre and doesn't have to deal with a drop-off towards the end. Of course, you'll see nose come up. The front nose will look to be repaired here, so the stop will be longer. Francisco Verdasco will also drop himself down onto lane then towards the mid-pack then of your field. Both of them then looking to get themselves away. Ollie Kvorka then coming himself out and away. Brand new front nose cone on that vehicle, and that's just going to help his times here. Worth keeping an eye on this one, Connery, because, you know, he had lost himself quite a bit of time without that front nose being an issue.
Yeah, in terms of drivers that are within striking distance, I would say Manea is definitely there for Ollie Kvorka's taking. Also to follow Dan Brewer, well, maybe not Dan Brewer, but Yannick Dennis Branch, maybe if he puts in some absolutely fantastic lap times here, but it's definitely not what you want to see at the start of the race, just getting that front wing damage. That's going to put him down on speed for the whole of the first half of the race, which it actually has done. And now he has that new front nose cone. Maybe, oh, there's a spinner ahead of him. That is Iona Manea right there, just spun onto the driver's right-hand side of the track. Again, it was coming out of the corner, just the traction just not there on the rear tires. It may be something to do with the wind, because the wind is actually relatively strong here, 12 miles an hour blowing in from the south. That could be the reason that some of these cars are looking a little bit unstable on the exit of the corners.
Yeah, you can see a new fastest lap then being set by Dan Brewer, 123.145. So Dan in 12th position, he can really make those moves happen. And I am wondering about that, because the wind coming from the south means that it's actually heading up that area, and you get a crosswind effect as you start to put the power down, and that can really hurt an unstable vehicle as delicate and as fragile as you could argue a jet fighter with these McLaren MP430s, Connery.
Yeah, as I said, the wind is actually gusting up to around 13, 14 miles an hour, now blowing from the southeast. So, yeah, that could definitely be an issue, as you said, especially with cars as aerodynamically fragile as these. So it could definitely be what we're seeing right there, is just having a little bit of a look back towards the front of the field. Still Chembalik Bassi. He's now, importantly, he's coming up on traffic. Let's see how he deals with this.
Yeah, Bollock Bassi then will need to try and negotiate traffic here. 2 cars ahead of him, Parkins and Manea. Manea has been struggling then over the racing distance and will have to be a little bit cautious through that club corner. You can see Parkins gets out of the way. Blue flag rules in effect here, so get out of the way then. And, well, we're not going to see any rants of the Sebastian Vettel kind. Hopefully we won't see here. Bollock Bassi gets through one. We'll hopefully get through the other as well. Umashi will have to follow with Jurgis, but they've had to round Verdaska then in the first part of the lap. So you can see Manea pulls out of the way and actually loses the position to Parkins as well, being a little bit lazy there, you could say, or a little bit sleepy there with the driver that was there just behind.
Yeah, sometimes he can be a little bit too courteous when letting the leaders through, and that is just what has happened there to allow Ryan Parkins through on Francisco Verdaska. That is for P15 and P16 out on track. Meanwhile, the rest of your battles going out on track right now is the one between, if I have a little bit of a look here, I think it's between Sabatov and Jan Schwitter. And this one's still relatively close. I think Jan Schwitter's still so very close to losing that DRS. So Sabatov is kind of pulling away just bit by bit by bit. But it could be definitely one to watch.
Certainly can be. Actually, the gap is 1.1 seconds, so Schwitter falls out of favour in terms of that one. But for the time being, the action will continue here at the Silverstone circuit for 40 laps. We're into the last 16 of the event. We're going to step aside for a moment. We'll be back after this. Bye. Inside the final 15 to go then here at Silverstone for what is this, the Grand Prix Series. And we've just seen a big moment whilst the cameras were side by side for Kazuki Umeshima in the 5. Heads himself through that danger corner of Priory for him, and he just started to lose the back end and did a full 180 before bringing it back together again. This means that he's lost the position then to the driver of Paschalis Jurgis. It's a course sim racing 1-2 when all is said and done here on Racebot TV and iRacing Live. I am #DMRJexberry, joined by Connery Maddock. And well, for Kazuki Umeshima there, Connery, that was the second big incident he has had at Priory Corner.
Yeah, and this second one actually was coming through Copse Corner as well, losing. That was the one that's kind of let Ryan Parkins lapse car through. So Kazuki Umeshima definitely not happy with the way that car is behaving at this moment in time. I didn't actually see the one going down into Priory, which is a little bit more severe than the one at Copse Corner. But the point is exactly the same. Kazuki Umeshima not happy with the way the tyres are wearing out on that Radicals Online.
No, he isn't here. And, well, the issue is going to be, though, that he is dropping a lot of time here and losing himself from the front two at the moment. He does have the ability, though, to make these mistakes here, Connery. He has a massive gap back to fourth position in the form of Michael Partington, who is about 20 seconds behind as things stand. And for the moment, that is going to be a very comfortable gap for him in terms of the racing that's been going on.
Yep, it is. The top three, as you mentioned, just under 20 seconds separate the top three from your fourth place position driver of Michael Partington. And those top three drivers, well, they're all World Championship Grand Prix Series drivers, all with the pro license. The only pro license driver that is currently not inside of that top three is that number 10 driver, Diego Oliveira, just down through the field right now, having made that pit stop and had a little bit of an incident early on in this race that put him down a couple of positions. He's currently running some relatively decent lap times here, around about 0.8 of a second faster than Dennis Branch and a second faster than the likes of Mathieu Calastrani and Ronaldo Augusto. Coming towards the end of this race, though, I think he has enough laps to at least fight the likes of Calastrani, Schwitter, et al. But it's going to be very, very close coming towards the end.
Certainly will. It's worth noting, actually, in that last lap, managed to get himself through on Yannick Danish there in the number 20 machine. So had the ability to get around. Dan Brewer then will be the next driver to try and make something like that happen. His last lap time was a 1:23.3, and you can see the difference of 2.4 seconds over that last lap compared to Danish. For Oliveira, though, you need to look at the lap times that he's doing compared to the likes of, say, a Jan Schwitter. Schwitter crosses the line now, does a 1:24.8. That's a very good lap time in terms of what needs to be said, but Oliveira needs to be running himself about a second and a half a lap quicker to really close himself down onto a driver like Jan Schwitter during this event. We'll see what time he does when he crosses the line. He does a 1:23.4, so yes, 1.5 seconds gets locked off the time. And he's using the tyres to his advantage. The problem's going to be, though, Connery, the more that he actually uses that tyre, the less he's actually going to have to use when he gets to Jan Schwitter.
Yeah, but you also have to say that because that car is lighter on fuel for this second stint, Diego Oliveira is actually experiencing less tyre wear on this second set of tyres because there's not, not as much weight in the car, puts less strain on that Pirelli rubber. So his tyres are definitely not going to wear as fast as the rest of the drivers. And if he keeps taking out 1.2 seconds, 1.3 seconds each lap, then he's definitely going to be in a good position to challenge Jan Schwitter.
Kazuki Umeshima then has bit the bullet. He's decided he needs to come in. Those tyres will not go any further. And on lap 28, it's going to have to be a quick one here. He will drop some time here and a couple of positions too. So for Kazuki Umeshima, I think it's the lesser of two evils here, Connery. I think he had to come in because he was struggling so much through that final section of the circuit on that last lap before he came in.
Yep, so he gets himself stopped in his box and change of rubber for Kazuki Umeshima. He drops down to P5 at the moment. Here comes P6. They're side by side with Jan Schwitter coming out of pit exit. Jan Schwitter is going to get it, though, and he's going to fall in ahead of Mathieu Calastrani. And that's definitely not what Kazuki Umeshima would have wanted one more car to try and negotiate, as Jan Schwitter has a little bit of an issue coming through Beckett and another issue coming out of Chapel Corner there as well. But I think this is going to be inevitable, Umeshima versus Jan Schwitter. I think Jan Schwitter is just not going to fight this one too much. Yeah, he leaves the door wide open coming through the right-hander of Stowe, and that is going to be Kazuki Umeshima up into P5. And, well, he's around about 5 seconds behind Ruslan Sabatov and 6 seconds behind Michael Partington. So he definitely has enough time. He has enough laps to get this done and get himself back into that third place position.
Yeah, when he crosses the line, it's 11 laps to go, and Umeshima, like a samurai sword, straight down the middle and making that one look very easy against Jan Schwieter. Schwieter let himself go out of the way there, didn't want to challenge it because he knew Umeshima was on a different strategy right now. We just also note that Dan Brewer has made his way through on Yannick Danish as well, so he's up into position number 11. For Oliveira, though, his next challenge will be Dennis Branch there, the battle for 9th and 10th. And he will close that one down, I'm pretty sure, before the end of the event. And he needs to. Worth also talking about the lead battle, though, here, Connery, because Paschalis Jurgis is closing in half a second a lap right now on Cembolet Bassi. The gap down to 3.4, but I doubt they'll fight because they are teammates.
Yes, they are, but then you got to think they have a huge buffer. Over that third place position driver currently that sits around about 25 seconds. I think they can battle in the last few laps without losing 25 seconds, but we'll have to see if team orders are in effect here.
We will have to see whether team orders are in effect. The battle for the final spot on the podium is not over, though. Ruslan Sabatov in the number 6 against Partington in the 10. We'll see what the positive sim racing driver can do here in terms of the challenge here towards Partington. He goes down on the brakes and they touch, and they're both going to go around there in the middle of the Abbey chicane, and Umeshima will say thank you very much and get himself through. That was late from Sabatov. The room wasn't there. We'll get a replay up on screen, and Connery, you had to feel he maybe just slightly outbraked himself into the corner. An innocent bystander, you have to feel, was Michael Partington.
Yeah, I'm going to be kind of honest here and say that that kind of move is unacceptable, in my opinion. The opportunity wasn't there, the door was not open, and he's braking from around about 5 or 6 car lengths back on Michael Partington, and that's something that should not be happening.
Shouldn't be, but you know, it has happened here. Umeshima gets himself back into position number 3. Worth noting, look at the front of Partington's machine. Even though it was a tap on the rear, there was also a tap on the front, and the front wing is now damaged for Partington. So now Partington will have to worry about Ronaldo Augusto just behind him in the back of position number 8. Also work out who's back into this fight then. It's Diogo Oliveira here, because he's just 6 seconds back from these two. And if they start fighting here in the final stage of this event, Connery, that's going to be a huge issue for Partington as he drops multiple positions and points.
Yeah, and absolutely a huge issue for the driver, as yes, Michael Partington now coming under threat from Ronaldo Augusto. So just gets the exit of Club Corner just a little bit wrong, going to drop him back a couple of tenths. But Diego Oliveira right behind these guys is closing and closing and closing each lap. 1.4 seconds, 1.3 seconds. He is definitely going to be in a position to challenge coming towards the end of this race. And then we'll see a 3-car scrap for what is P7 now on track.
Also worth talking about the final spot on the podium, because Sabatov does have front wing damage here. So now Jan Schwieter's back into the fight and could take a podium out, well, take 4th place even, out of relatively nowhere. I do apologise there, because Kazuki Umeshima, of course, up into position number 3 back again. So, you know, now you're looking at these battles that are happening. You know, the time is ticking away for these drivers, and they need to start finding that a little bit more and start gearing themselves up for the last stages of the event here, Connery.
Yep, they really do, and fastest lap of the race was set last time by Kazuki Umeshima on that fresh rubber. It was a 1 at 22.5, around about 1.1 seconds faster than your leader. That's not going to be enough for Kazuki Umeshima, so I think he's going to be just happy with that final spot on the podium just for now. Meanwhile, there is a battle going on further down your field. This is Unit Munea versus Francisco Verdasca coming side by side, coming down into the left-hander just before bridge here, and that is going to be Verdasca up 1 spot.
Yeah, it is, and Francisco Verdasca, the battle of the cars, a lap down, gets himself up into P16 then, and they will both have to let Umeshima through then in terms of the battling going on. Don't count out Matteo Calistani, though, in the battle for P number 5, because he's been very quiet, but he's just stayed there out of trouble and is now right on the rear of the driver of Jan Schwieter. Schwieter's fallen back this lap then from the driver of Sabatov, and that's not going to be what Schwieter wants to be dealing with in the later stages. Calistani's just been keeping his tyres there, just very calm, making sure that he's not taking too much out of them. And you can see a 124.6 meets a 125.2. He took 6 tenths, Connery, out of him that last lap.
Yeah, absolutely huge margin as they head their way through Maggots and Beckett's right now. Ruslan Savagev's just getting away a little bit, well, actually by quite a margin. In fact, it was around about half a second the last time by. So Jan Schwitter versus Castani is the main battle that we're going to be watching. Augusto and Partington have separated out just a little bit. Meanwhile, Oliveira having a little bit of an issue coming out of Chapel Corner, but manages to keep it pointed in the right direction. He's still taking time on the order of a second to around about 1.3 seconds out of the drivers ahead of him. So let's see how far he can get up through the field with only around about 6 or 7 laps remaining.
Yeah, you saw there just a little wiggle there from Diogo Oliveira. Not too much there hurting in terms of the battles, but Calistani closes they head up towards Abbey, but won't be able to make that move then down on the brakes. Worth noticing the gap between the leaders is 3.2 seconds. That one hasn't really come down in this one then, with just 6 laps to go when they next cross the line here. It's 7 laps to go for these drivers when they next cross the line for Calistani. He just needs to set up Schwitter here. Schwitter's going to go defensive when the opportunity gives him. You saw he let the position of Umashima go because he knew he was quicker, but now that he knows that Calistani's on the same pace, you know that Schwitter will fight this one tooth and nail.
Yeah, he definitely will. Looking at the lap times last time by, almost identical. Jan Schwitter were 125.187. Matteo Calistani 125.192. So 100ths of a second separates these two drivers at this stage in the race as they head themselves through Maggots and Beckett's. And, well, it'll be DRS open for Matteo Calistani this time, coming down the hangar straight. He's going to get the slipstream as well, but he's not going to be close enough coming down into Stowe Corner to make a move. But he is getting closer, and if you're Jan Schwitter, you have to be just a little bit nervous right now because Calistani is definitely there, and he will take any opportunity if it arises. Meanwhile, behind these guys, Diego Oliveira still taking not as much time as he has done previously out of the cars ahead of him, but we still got 6 laps to go, and, well, it's going to be, well, less than 6 seconds between himself and Ronaldo Augusto, Michael Partington. It's been a side-by-side for Calistani and Schwitter, and Schwitter has got some suspension damage, and he's going to spin under the Silverstone bridge right there. And wow, that one requires a replay. That was side by side coming down into this left-right chicane, and just a little bit, the slightest of contacts coming through the last part of it. Maybe not the tracking out of Jan Schwitter's left front tire, and when you put the power down, the car just wanted to spit itself right, and now he is losing positions over positions over positions.
Yeah, he's now down behind Dan Brewer. So for Schwitter, that one move there, it was just the lightest of contacts, and then he spun the car around. So for him, that's a position loss and a wasted opportunity. But this opens out the field once again, and now the question becomes Oliveira here and how he can close himself back down then during the final stage then of this one here. You can see he's really, really close to the driver of Augusto, and Augusto lets him go. He knows he doesn't have enough to hold him up, so he lets the position go through then for Oliveira, and Oliveira up then into position number 7 easily through Stowe. His next challenge is Partington here, and he only closed up on him a second a lap last time. I reckon he could maybe even reach Sabatov at this rate here, Connery. He's got himself 5 laps to go when he next crosses the line. It's not out of the question here for him to close 7 seconds.
No, definitely not out of the question. He's going to have around about 5 laps next time by, so he's going to have to return to his previous form of taking about 1.3 seconds, 1.4 seconds out of those drivers every single time he comes by the stripe. But it's definitely possible. We've seen him do it before. But first he has to get past Michael Partington, Matteo Calastrani, and then he has to start thinking about Sabatov. But while he gets past Michael Partington Calastrani, he's going to be losing time. So it's definitely on the edge right now whether Diego Oliveira can make his way up and take 4th place.
That is going to be the question, and up into P number 7, worth looking then at the gaps here as Kazuki Umashima again goes purple with a 122.221. That is about a second off of qualifying pace for him. So, you know, he is really now trying to use all of what he has available to him now just to prove just how quick he really is in terms of the racing here. Oliveira and Quoka now getting a spin there in the 13. That's coming out of out of bridge. He was literally just lapped by Jurgis, and he just got a huge tank slapper coming out of Abbey, I do believe that was there, Connery. And for Quoka, a bad day personified to make it even worse.
Yeah, the track drops away a little bit there, and the car's going to feel a little bit lighter as it comes over that crest. And I think that was what Ollie Cocker had to deal with there. And, well, not deal with it very well, should I say. And that must have been a little bit scary for Vasilis Gurgis, because that was right in his rearview mirror.
Yeah, it was, and he only just made that position as well, and Gurgis will be thanking his lucky stars then. Keep an eye on Oliveira, though. The gap between him and Sabatov was down to just 6 seconds. The gap between him and Partington, however, last time they crossed the line was just 2 seconds. That looks a lot closer this time, and Oliveira will now have to deal with the dirty air. Hopes that he can get himself into DRS in the final 5 laps. Let's see what he does when he comes across the line. The timer was a 23.5 last time. It's a little bit slower. It's a 23.8. But again, though, he brings the gap down to 1.2 seconds. This lap or the next one, Connery, he's going to be there on Partington.
Yeah, definitely there on Partington. I think Ruslan Sabatov is now out of the question for Diego Oliveira. I don't think he's going to manage to get himself 4th place position. I'd love for him to prove me wrong, but it looks like a very, very tall task indeed. And, well, no DRS this time by for Diego Oliveira. Still outside of that 1 second gap that he needs to be within on Michael Partington. But I think it's going to be next lap that he'll have the DRS. Since in this middle sector, it's so tire dependent. You just see this gap visually close up every single apex, every single corner entry. And it's just a matter of time now before this battle is on for 6th position.
Might just be here. How close will it be? Oliveira needs to now put the pressure on here, because he will want to get past Kalistani as well. A top 5 will be absolutely beautiful from where he was after his incident earlier on. But of course, he doesn't have long to do it. 3 laps, in other words, 15.5 kilometers to make something happen when they next cross the line. So it's not going to be a case of he has too many areas to really make work of it. And it's not the best of lap times, you could say, from Oliveira. He's forcing Partington to really push here. The gap was 1.2. That gap's not 1.2 anymore. He's in DRS range now as they head towards Maggots and Beckett in just a few moments' time. They cross the start-finish line. It's a 124.1 for Oliveira, 124.5 for Partington. He now gets into DRS, but he's not close enough now because he's only 7/10 of a second behind. He now needs to use all of his ERS to make the move happen.
Yeah, and we'll see it as they come through Maggots and Beckett, and they're going to come through Chapel Corner right now. It's going to be DRS open for Diego Oliveira now. You see that rear wing flap open. I don't think he's going to be close enough coming down into Stowe Corner. That could be absolutely crucial if he wants to try and gain a position over Matthew Castrani, which is ahead of Michael Partington at this moment in time. And time is running out for Diego Oliveira right now. He may be able to, it's looking likely that he'll be able to get past Michael Partington, but the likes of Kalistani and Sabatov looking very, very unlikely at this moment in time. The more time that he gets stuck behind Michael Partington.
There is traffic ahead in Ian Omanea here. You would be kidded into thinking this is a battle for the race lead. It's not. Oliveira now all over the back through Abbey. Now needs to try and find a way to make something happen, but you can't traditionally make a move into the complex here as they head into Priory. This difficult left-hander Umashima's undoing here today. Now you get yourself down into Brooklands. You can see he takes a much tighter line. He's got more tyre life to really make that happen. Now the traffic's right ahead of them, and he's tucked right in underneath. Needs to get the run then coming out of this corner, and after this though it will be a lap to go when they cross the line. Connery, he's close, may need a bit of help.
Yeah, it's going to need a bit of help as he tries to follow coming through Cops Corner, but you just see he loses all front downforce on the front wing of that Formula 1 car, and it's just not going to help. And especially coming through this Maggots and Beckett section, you're just struggling with the front end grip when you're following a car all the way through here. He's going to get DRS, but also importantly, Michael Partington is also going to get DRS because he's within 1 second of the traffic ahead of him. That's going to negate the effect as the lap car does get out of the way, but Michael Partington has to say thank you, Aina Manea. It's giving him a chance in this battle.
Yes, it has, and of course it is 1 lap to go. Bolotbasi just passes the stripe then. As you can see, Oliveira desperately trying to make something happen here. All over the back as he heads through Club to try and make a move happen, and he gets himself close. There is a defensive line taken. He'll go to the outside then, and Albie trying to do it the long way around, but deeper on the brakes, trying to go for the cut back is Oliveira. Run the outside line again. Gets stuck on the outside all over the grass as he head down into Bridge. How has he managed to hold on to that one? But he stays behind just for the time being through Priory, and he'll have to do that work all over again in terms of the racing that is going on right now. For Bolotbasi though, he finds himself now towards the Club Corner right now, and you can see here an issue going on, and what has been going on is not what was needed to have been happening here. And you can see Oliveira trying with Partington. just still close, but not close enough to really try and make that happen then in the final stages of this event. You can see just trying to look for any sort of way to make something happen. For the moment, no, isn't going to make this move here into this section. Needs a fantastic run coming down this straight, but rounding the final corner is Chembola Bassi here, rounds Luffield and will take himself into history as he wins at Silverstone with a fantastic display from the front of the field. Great result for Core Sim Racing. Oliveira hasn't managed to make that move happen as Paschalis Jurgis will finish in second overall. Umeshima will come home in position number 3, we think, but Oliveira still looking at Partington, who's putting up a resilient defense here. Maybe the tires are running out then for the driver of Diogo Oliveira into this left-hander. They try again, and no, isn't going to happen. A tighter line though, a bad line though from Partington. The door was open, but he can't take it as they head to bridge, and surely though, he's held on for the final stages. He's running out of tyre life as Oliveira tries desperately, and Brewer now on the back, and a mistake from Oliveira allows Brewer on the outside to try and make this one for position number 7, and they get close. Brewer needs a better run on the drive, but it will be Oliveira holding off this one just for a fantastic final stage that we have just seen towards the end of the event. Sabatov 4th, Kalistani 5th. Connery, well, the race didn't disappoint at the end here. No tyres versus one set of tyres, no tyres won.
Yeah, exactly. And there's one word for that last lap, and that was just wow. I've never seen a defensive driving like that from Michael Partington, and he just showed that he can defend for his life. He secures that 6th place position under an immense amount of pressure from a World Championship Series driver. And I've got to say, if we did a Driver of the Day award, it would be Michael Partington for that fantastic defensive effort.
Certainly would be. It's worth now going down the results and seeing just how everyone ended up then in this event. Chembola Bassi then, number 1. Position number 1 then, finishes home in a time of 55 minutes and 49 seconds. He takes the win here in this 2/3 distance race by 4.6 seconds over Paschalis Jurgis. Suzuki Umeshima then finishes behind the 2 core cars then in 3rd position overall. A mistake today with the tyres meant he had to come in and make a stop. Sabatov holds off 4th ahead of teammate Kalistani. Michael Partington comes home in 6th ahead of Diogo Oliveira. Dan Brewer comes home in position number 8, beaten to the line by Oliveira. Reynaldo Augusto finishes in P9, and the last car on the lead lap is Dennis Branch rounding out the top 10. And then you look at the cars who are 1 lap down, the likes of Jan Schwieter, Yannick Danish. Here the likes of Kleber Toffoli, Ryan Parkins, Oli Kvoka, Francisco Verdasca then struggling, as well as Inio Manea and Christian Boog. And you see the 3 drivers who failed to finish today: Thomas Busch, Mark Warmington, and Evan Lathoras as well. But for the time being, we're just going to step aside for the moment as post-race coverage here after the Grand Prix Series event is coming to you here on Racebot TV and iRacing Live in just a few moments' time. Don't go away.
There are 3 different paths if you want to call yourself a world champion of sim racing. NASCAR, open wheels, or endurance racing. But no matter which one you take, you can guarantee that the journey will always be tough, which few will ever complete. The iRacing World Championship Grand Prix Series, the premier road racing series in sim racing, started with a new car taking center stage. Then, it was Martin Kroenke resisting any challenge thrown at him to break the 5-year stranglehold of Gregor Hutu as being world champion. These drivers and teams are not just competing for pride, they're competing for money. And with over $20,000 in prizes for each of the series up for grabs, drivers really do put it all on the line.
The NASCAR Beginner Series, powered by iRacing, is the premier NASCAR esports series featuring the cars and tracks from the Monster Energy NASCAR Cup Series. The 2016 campaign saw a return to the top of the mountain by Ray Alfalla as a 3-time Oval World Champion. The march to that championship was not easy though, despite the fact that Ray Alfalla took home the most points in series history. It just also happened to be the tightest championship fight we had ever seen. These guys are set for the 2017 campaign.
The Blancpain GT Series hosts the top GT3 endurance teams in sim racing, with groups of 3 or more drivers sharing the wheel. This is a championship you can't win alone, and you need the same determination, passion and drive from your teammates to be successful. They often say that it takes just one mistake to lose a championship, and in team racing, it may not be your mistake that costs you the win. Last season, VRS Coanda Simsport won the championship by a single point. This year, who will step up to the plate?
These are the iRacing Esport World Championships, the pinnacle of sim racing competition. Catch it all season long with live coverage on iRacing.com/live.
Well, after what was a brilliant race, it would be a comfortable race in the end for Chembol Bassi as he'd take the victory there in this round of the championship here at what is the circuit of Silverstone. And well, for him, a 4.6 second victory over his teammate would be everything that he would need going into next week's action. Of course, it is worth reminding you, ladies and gentlemen, that the 5th round of the iRacing World Championship Grand Prix Series is coming to you from Monza next Saturday. Of course, you can join the likes of Will Vincent, Johnny Simone, and Paul Smith as well for RaceSpot Race Day prior to that also. Make sure you check that one out on RaceSpot TV and iRacing Live. But Connery, it's worth noting about what happened at the beginning of this race because there was a huge incident through Maggots and Beckett's which took 2 or 3 cars out of this event.
Yeah, that was the incident involving Ronaldo Augusto being punted across the apex of one of the apexes at Maggots and Beckett's section. This is the incident that took so many drivers out of this race initially, and something that I've seen in review of this replay, in fact, is that there was a secondary incident behind, right at the back of the field between Kleber Toffoli and Ionnet Manea. When Toffoli tried to slow up for the wreck ahead of him, Ionnet Manea didn't quite see it, ran into the back and caused a secondary incident at the back of the field as well, and it was pretty much carnage coming through Maggots and Beckett's on the first lap.
Certainly is, and it's worth remembering, Connery, that the first lap is always the most dangerous lap of an event. You're all together, you're all trying to jostle for position and make sure that you can gain as much as you can. Maybe some drivers see a position in the headlights and maybe get a little bit greedy, but in this situation, I'd say it was an unfortunate event that happened with one driver going off a little bit wide to begin with. It's so difficult to recover through Maggots and Beckett's, especially when you're out on the outside missing the apex.
Yeah, exactly. And as I said, the first half of this lap, especially here at Silverstone, is very, very tough at the start of the race because these are all medium speed, pretty much single line corners. And if you're not single file, then you're risking incident or you're risking losing so much time on the first lap that it's going to be very, very hard to recover it on the latter part of the race. And you just saw that the front of your field got very single file very, very quickly, maybe a little bit too wide with some drivers. But meanwhile, your mid pack was absolutely jostling for position 2 by 2 by 2, almost 3 wide between the likes of Ollie Quokka, Matthew Calistrani, and Warmington coming into the first part of Maggots and Beckett's section. And then you saw that incident involving Ronaldo Augusto et al. And that's just what can happen when you have a couple of single line corners after a race start.
Certainly do, and well, we're going to see this incident that happened for Mark Warmington here as well. And for Mark Warmington, you know, a drive that you normally expect towards the front of the field, didn't have the best of qualifying issues, had himself a little bit of an incident coming out to Stowe with Ollie Cloker. And in the end, that was enough to end his event, Connery. And for him, you know, Mark Warmington is a driver that you expect to be up there and scrapping and fighting. And, you know, from the positions that we were seeing up there, there was a top 5 available for him.
Yeah, exactly. Looking at the instant coming through Stowe Corner, it looks like it's going to be a bit of tire-to-tire contact between Warmington and Ollie Quokka. Just spat him towards the outside, and Ollie Quokka cut back in, completely not in control of that car, so you can't exactly blame him for like an unsafe rejoin or something like that. But yeah, not the greatest day at the office for Mark Warmington. Ended up finishing 37 laps down, second to last place. And, well, he'll definitely be hoping for more when we get to. It's going to be Monza next week, Jake.
Yeah, it is going to be Monza next week then. For these drivers in the Grand Prix Series, this will happen on the Sunday afternoon. Of course, the Saturday afternoon and the Saturday morning a little bit as well, you will see RaceSpot Race Day in all of full effect. And don't forget, later on tonight here, ladies and gentlemen, it's a RaceSpot TV triple header. This was the first. The second will come in the form of the Skip Barber 2K World Cup. Who can stop Arjen de Freitas? That is the big question in there from Positive Sim Racing. And then after that, the first of 3 Indy 500s. The first one coming to you with Will Vincent and the gang as well. Of course, that series, of course, being done is the Indy Elite Series, joined with Apex Infotech. But for the time being and for this afternoon's coverage, that's been the commentator even of What is Connery Maddock. That has been Paul Smith behind the cameras. I have been #DoYouMind Jake Sperry, and Bollock Bassi shines brightly then as he takes some all-important momentum as he heads towards Monza in 2 different F1 series. Good night.